Hi, Outfest. I'm Mike Doherty, the director of festival programming. I know we're all going through an extremely strange time right now, and many of us are seeking comfort in the pleasures of art, movies, music, books, and more. And Outfest is here to help with that in some small way. Through some exciting new partnerships, we've got plenty to share with you over the coming weeks. Films by Outfest friends and alumni, as well as some Outfest exclusive supplemental content, including interviews with filmmakers and more. So let's get started. One of the most celebrated films this past summer at Outfest Los Angeles was St. Francis, a wonderful debut feature directed by Alex Thompson that was written by and stars Kelly O'Sullivan in the lead role of Bridget. The film debuted at the 2019 South by Southwest Film Festival, where it won an audience award, and later found a lot of support on the queer film festival circuit due to its refreshingly honest depiction of a young woman in her 30s grappling with questions of her life's direction, her decision to terminate a recent pregnancy, and her tough new job as the nanny to the daughter of a successful but struggling lesbian couple. This is a sharp, extremely funny, and authentic story that hones in on topics like abortion and postpartum depression and queer relationships with warmth and humor, and features one of the best child performances I've seen in years. The film also won an audience award at Outfest for Favorite First Feature, and we're so happy to share it with you now in partnership with its distributor, Oscilloscope. So please watch the film and then enjoy this interview I've done with the director of the film, Alex Thompson, and its writer and lead star, Kelly O'Sullivan. Enjoy. Hello to our Outfest audience. Hopefully you've just watched St. Francis via our partnership with Oscilloscope, and I'm now joined by the director and co-writers and star of St. Francis. We have Alex Thompson and Kelly O'Sullivan here with us. Thank you both for joining us in a very strange time.
Yes, thank you for having us. Yeah.
Where are you calling from during all of this?
I know, it feels so many people are trapped indoors, and it feels like we're rubbing it in their faces.
Yeah, we're trapped outdoors. No, we do have beds to sleep in. We're calling from Kentucky, from a cabin that my family has in Kentucky. So about a few weeks ago, we felt the call and we're like, you know what, we should get out of town. And very glad we did.
Yeah. Is this where you're gonna stay until further notice, whatever further notice is? Yeah.
We've been advised to take it week by week.
By our therapist.
Because when I think about the indefinite future, my entire being shuts down and crumples into a little ball. And so for this week, we're here.
Yeah, and I, on the other hand, am slowly regressing to childhood since this is where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
So I couldn't be more comfortable. We really have the best case scenario.
Yeah. Just in a cocoon of comfort in the
exactly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, some of us are going through this by watching a lot of film and television, and so I'm really happy that we're able to share St. Francis with Outfest, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it for our audience, and maybe start at the beginning with the conception of the film. I know this is a screenplay by Kelly, so if you could talk a little bit about what inspired this particular story.
Yeah, this is the first thing that I've written, and it's based on two little nuggets of truth, one of which is that I was a nanny in my 20s, and then the other is that I got an abortion in my 30s. And I started to think about how those two things combined in one summer might play off of each other and might lend itself to a narrative that might, I don't know, portray abortion in a different way than maybe we're used to seeing, and also bring a lot of humor and lightness to it.
Yeah, that was something that was really striking about the film, and it did portray the process of abortion in a way I haven't seen, and also kind of a lot of things were brought up. It was kind of about how women are discouraged about talking about things like abortion or about, menstruation or, all of these things that you kind of don't see in this clever, funny way, but also, I love the element of the moms kind of teaching Frances how to speak about these things from a young age and do it by herself.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, that they have a household that really tries to instill a sense of openness and not being ashamed of those things, but they also have things that they're not yet willing to talk about. Right. That, Maya's going through this postpartum depression, and that Annie feels like she can't be there and she wants to be and she doesn't know how to deal with that. Kind of the thesis of the film is it's a lot easier if we share those things with each other and talk about the things that otherwise we might feel ashamed of.
And I wanted to talk a bit about your collaboration, Alex. I know this is technically your first feature, but you have some experience before that. And I assume because you are not socially distanced from each other right now, you have a relationship that predates
Oh,
the
the split screen's working out well then. Oh, it's great. Yes, we do have a relationship. We're in a relationship. Have been for 4 years. I keep forgetting what the right way to say it. We're partners. We're partners in more than profession.
Yeah, that's right.
And so there was a lot of intimacy built into that. And we also met on a shoot that Kelly had written a pilot with a friend of hers, and we shot like a sizzle reel for it. So I had actually kind of failed miserably at that, I think.
Me too. The writing was not great either.
I thought it was very funny, but but I think she knew I was a director, and we were literally sharing the same couch, and I just remember I kind of got involved like 10 pages in, because I'm kind of like I have like a nice little community in Chicago of cinematographer actually who's LA based, but he's Chicagoan, honorary Chicagoan, but like producers and crew. And so I kind of came in with the idea of like, I think we could do this. I really think you could make this. And that was kind of my purpose, I think, was just the first person who was like, let's do it. Let's just commit to it. Yeah, it wasn't so much like story based exactly, maybe structure, but yeah.
I wanted to talk about, I mean, this cast of amazing women in this film, and I just want to talk about the conception of a bunch of the characters, starting with Bridget. Kelly, you mentioned some autobiographical content that inspired the film, but I'm wondering, in conceiving of the character, how much you wanted to separate it from yourself, or did you kind of keep it close to yourself?
Well, that was a big help from Alex, is he was like, it's really important that this character isn't just you. And so then we started to explore all the ways in which Bridget is different. And chief among them is that in the film, Bridget doesn't have a circle of friends who she can share this with. And in my life, I had an incredibly supportive circle of friends. And so even though it started with, fact from my life, it really sprungboard into fiction from there, which is really freeing. It would be so boring to just play yourself. I do feel like I wrote in my voice, but then, Alex gave me the gift of saying, and now veer farther away from yourself than you might have thought. And that was a lot better.
Yeah, I think like Kelly is so much more actively progressive than Bridget, and actively open and actively questioning. And there were moments in the process where I was like, it's going to be a more interesting film if Bridget isn't so to get put together. Like you're giving her a lot of really great things to say. Maybe somebody else says those things.
Yeah.
Maybe that comes from Lily or Charine. Yeah. Kelly's got a lot of great things to say.
And I loved the relationship between you and Ramona, who plays young Frances, who just seems like such a gifted young actor, because it doesn't feel like, you're cutting around a child actor. Like one of my favorite scenes is when you explain patriarchy to Frances and she kind of processes it and applies it to her own life. Like, my guitar lesson is patriarchy. And it just felt like a real child processing that. I'm just wondering how you found Ramona and what it was like working with her.
Yeah, it was, there's a wonderful casting company in Chicago, or 3 casting directors, Mickey Pascal, Jennifer Rudnicki, and AJ Lynx. And they brought in a lot of really talented girls, but AJ kept saying, like, I have a really good feeling about this person. And she had showed us commercials like for Swedish Covenant Hospital, the kind of ads where like a kid is describing how they think a baby is made, and another really cute kid is like, that no, it pops out of mommy's belly button or something. It's all improvised. And so she was just this very natural presence, and that didn't really stop. That didn't let up.
Yeah, she was very herself on camera. Very little coaching had to happen, and that was some of the spark of what we saw in the audition room. Is we wanted somebody who could be themselves on camera rather than posing or trying to be their version of like a precocious kid. She just is smart and she is fun. And that was what we were looking for.
Yeah, she can kind of own a room at times, which is pretty extraordinary for a kid. Like the first scene
Totally.
you and her in the playroom is kind of just like she's like, I own you now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't have to be nice to you.
Yeah.
And that's something, because I feel like so many kids think acting is like plastering on this smile. And she knew that it was about like, what is the story of the scene? Like a little Pacino.
She's a little Pacino for sure.
And then conceiving of Maya and Annie's relationship, I mean, this relationship is really the core of why the film is played so wonderfully on the queer film festival circuit, including winning an audience award at Outfest. Congratulations. I hope the trophy got to you at some point.
Yes.
So proud of that. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious as to at what point you decided to introduce kind of a queer marriage into this and what was exciting about that.
Yeah, I always knew that I wanted the film to be inclusive, and that then knowing it would be a same-sex couple, that their sexuality wasn't going to be the crux of their struggle in this film, that it was just going to be an accepted part of the world, and that then their struggle comes from parenting challenges. And a lot of the film is trying to normalize things that have been seen as sort of like outside in the past in TV and film, and so trying to normalize like queer parenting and interracial marriage and abortion and postpartum and all of these things. And so that was an intentional element of it.
And I just love the way their marriage is written. It's obviously we're coming in an advanced stage of it. They're about to have their second child. They have a lot of problems have built up. A lot of mistrust at some point has built up. And I'm just wondering what work was done. Did that all on the page? Did you write this for particular actors that came in for Jardine and Lily?
Sorry, the chimes.
The chimes are so intense.
For another character in this Q&A.
Yeah, hold for wind chime.
That's right. I wrote those roles for Lily and Chadeen, knowing that they would bring a lot of instant empathy and catharsis to the film. They're just actors who you watch and you love them already. And I did want to see a couple that had been together for a while, a couple that had history, like you're saying, and that you feel the weight of the past in them, both for good and bad. You see that they have a lot of like love and wonderful history, and then you see the ways in which their marriage is starting to fracture because of these very specific circumstances. And then to have this total stranger come into your house in a very intimate way and to witness some of these marital issues that start to pop up just by nature of being in close proximity. And then working with Lily and Chadeen was just the biggest gift in the world, because, you see them and you love them.
Absolutely, yeah. It being kind of both of your first feature, technically, I'm wondering, it has such a distinct feel and look to it that comedy and drama is blended so well, and the comedy is very, biting at times, but it flows very naturally. I'm just wondering if there were kind of visual inspirations and tonal inspirations that you brought to this that you wanted the film to feel like.
Well, I think I knew going in that one of the biggest pitfalls of a lot of first films and a lot of independent films is just a discontinuity of tone and like a lack of unity visually. So Nate Hertzellers and I sort of chose this like handheld approach in this 40 millimeter lens that kind of lives between comedy and drama, just like you said, to root the film. So like in the same way that we're approaching the characters with sort of this maximum idea of empathy, the camera also isn't going to judge them. It's not going to we're going to leave Kelly's script to be the one making jokes, to be the one pulling at your heartstrings, but the camera is not going to try to do that. So I think it came from like a maximal faith in the script that we were like, oh, we don't need to like put a sad hat on this scene by, whatever. And with some film tricks, we don't need to put a funny hat on this moment.
And the only thing I cared about visually in the film was that I wanted it to look bright. I was like, this needs to be a bright summer film, because knowing some of the issues that are going to be dealt with, I didn't want it to feel dour. I didn't want it to feel like heavy and like an issue film. I was like, it should feel like a summer buddy comedy. And the only time that it doesn't feel like that is when we're inside with Maya, when she starts to go through postpartum, and then it can feel sort of dark. But
yeah, just knowing the contrast is always going to be more interesting, that you have this story that is going to have ups and downs, but it's in the midst of summer, and so there's got to be cicadas and sunscreen and
Wind
play
chimes.
dates and wind chimes. But if we'd said it in the middle of winter and everybody's sad and there's an abortion and there's marital strife, it would be a much less easy to stomach film, much more patronizing film, I would say.
What was the Chicago neighborhood you filmed in? I'm interested. It had that very specific kind of like little upper middle class suburban feel.
Upper middle class. Cobblestone Street.
What does class even mean anymore?
I know, right? Yeah. All those people are probably selling cobblestones for toilet paper now.
Yeah.
That was Wilmette. That was mostly Wilmette. So all the exteriors, all the streets are Wilmette. And then we filmed a little bit in
Evanston, and then in our neighborhood in Chicago, which at the time was Ravenswood.
Yeah, we actually shot in our apartment. And Jace, the boyfriend's apartment, is actually his apartment, and that's actually his roommate.
True indie filmmaking. I love it.
Yeah, just very talented locations.
There's another theme running through that I'm really interested in. Maya's character specifically is a practicing Catholic. And I'm wondering, just off the bat, as someone raised Catholic, were either or both of you raised Catholic? That inspired coming to
He lucked out.
I lucked out.
You lucked out, yeah. No, because it was really interesting. Like when it's introduced, when first like Maya's kind of like the iconography that's decorating the house is introduced, and they talk about not sending Frances to school, and your character Kelly says that'll probably make her hate the church less. That really resonated. So I'm wondering about the origins of this element of the story, because it was really also interesting. It's just I loved the way, like, growing up being raised Catholic, like, you are taught a specific thing about how you should view abortion and how you should view gay relationships, and I just loved how all of those things kind of existed in a way that was accepted within this family, but also had an element of faith to it. So I talked a lot about it, but I'm wondering about your inspiration for the script.
No, I mean, that's exactly what it is I was raised Irish Catholic. Little trivia, my confirmation name is Bridget. My full name is Kelly Colleen Mary Bridget O'Sullivan.
Update the IMDb.
The trivia section just got
the things that you're
Yeah.
but the way, like you're talking about, the way that I feel like being raised the way I was, which is, there's a lot of messaging about how wrong abortion is, that it's a mortal sin. And I knew that I wanted Bridget to have fallen away from the church in the same way that I have. But then I also wanted it to just kind of exist in the background. Like I didn't want to hit anything too hard over the head, but I wanted it to almost feel like it's something that is still with Bridget, even if she has intellectually fallen away from it, there are echoes there. But then I also wanted to portray it in a positive way with Maya, because there are plenty of people who have wonderful relationships with the church. And it was important to me that it wasn't a film that was bashing religion. It was just sort of saying, like, in a subtle way, having a conversation about it without having that conversation. And then, I wanted to have the opportunity of Bridget having this confession scene with somebody who means more to her than religion does. Because I think the way that Bridget relates to the world is she sees what people get out of religion. She gets that in relationships with people. She gets forgiveness and self-acceptance and faith through people, in the same way that Maya gets it through a relationship with God.
That I love the confessional scene as well, because Kelly, I know that if you've ever been in a confessional, the conversations you have in there are not as honest as the one you have with Frances in that scene. And it was just such it's like, oh my God, if it was only that refreshing and
accepting, non-judgmental.
Yeah, like not an element of fear of, are they going to be mad at me for this? Yeah, that's
absolutely.
So to wrap things up a little, I mean, you've been on the festival circuit about a year with this film, and I'm just wondering, as time has gone on and more audiences have seen it, has anything about the response surprised you, or did anything come up in front of certain audiences that you didn't really expect to?
I think more than anything, I'm not so surprised by it anymore, but I haven't seen the film since South by Southwest.
Oh, wow.
So it's been a long time since I watched it. But I think more than anything, I've just been surprised by the overwhelmingly positive reactions. Occasionally, there will be a man a straight man for sure over 70 who's like, I'm just interested to know where the men go in this film. They just disappear. What an interesting choice. But more than anything, I've just been so overwhelmed by how positive it's been. And we definitely didn't expect that, before our premiere. We didn't expect any response.
Same. I was bracing for hate. Like, I was really worried that this film would get hate. And I've been so moved that it's gotten such a warm, loving response.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, it got a warm response at Outfest as well. Thank you so much for sharing your time. Something else, I've done another of these interviews and we had a little fun question. I don't know if in a cabin in Kentucky you have access to your Netflixes and your audiobooks and everything, but what are you watching, listening to pass the time in this situation?
We've watched Magic Mike and 12 Angry Men so far. Those are both revisits.
That's right. And
Magic Mike XXL.
The original. But I'd like to track down XXL because I remember in the trailer there was like a Mountain Dew moment that looked really fun.
And he does like a carpenter dance. Like, remember he like dances on a table.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's more genuine.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
we watched Top Chef.
Yeah, we're watching Top Chef.
Perfect.
Excellent. Yeah.
All right. Have a good day, both of you.
Thank
you so much.
This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.